Hello everyone, welcome to Viz Review with myself, Luke, and Mabel today. Hi Luke.
Hi Eva. Hi everyone.
So that's the famous Mabel who picks out her dog favorites.
Yeah, I think she's looking at a cat out of the window at the moment.
She
Yeah,
looks
she's
exactly
here.
like
She's
Maggie, so
here
hopefully people
in body,
can.
if not spirit.
Yeah, she looks a bit sleepy.
Yeah, she's been sleeping by my feet.
Oh, hey Mabel. You can't see her face because she's so black. We have the same problem at here. So yeah, so everyone say hi to Mabel. And we're at a bit of an earlier time, one day earlier than usual. And I'm excited because it means there are actually fewer visitors that we have to review. So I don't feel so bad about, half the people missing out. Yeah. How did you find this week's data?
It was good. It was a lot more complex, I guess. There was a lot more fields in it, a lot more kind of geographic elements. It was good. It was nice. It was interesting. It was almost kind of choice paralysis in terms of how to approach it.
Yeah.
So I finished mine off this morning, and I chose to look at the impact of COVID on air travel. So basically, I took the maximum values for each month and for each country and airport, and compared that to the corresponding month the previous year, and pretty sobering reading, to be honest.
I bet. And I know that, so Andy did his Watch Me Viz yesterday, and I think he was really excited about the data set, but then he said it was really hard to work with. Like, I think just the amount of data that was there, and like you say, what do you choose? What kind of story do you pick? So looking forward to seeing everyone's visits. Let's have a look on the collection that I've created, and we're going to start with Jared Flores. I haven't done mine yet. I've just not had time, which seems to be the story of my life. So Jared has created a couple of line charts. Since the year 2000, total amount of yearly air travelers in America was on the steady upward trend. Then the pandemic hit. And I guess that's what you're pointing out as well, right? The sobering read of, well, suddenly it goes downhill.
Yeah, but if you look at it at sort of a more granular level of countries and airports, the amount of disparity between 2020 and the year before, particularly in the US as well. I mean, the US accounts for so much air travel in terms of footfall through airports that it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it goes back to levels that were well before the 2000 levels.
Yeah.
But of course, that is the case when everything is locked down. I mean, it's not like no one wanted to travel. It's just people weren't able to or allowed to.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was interesting that he's zooming into 2019, January 2019 to October 2020 to really show that a bit more obviously. What's your feedback to Jared on his viz?
I like the simplicity of it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure you look at the scale on the left-hand side, because the charts have got similar space in terms of screen real estate on the dashboard. So you've got to make sure that you check the scale, because the scales are wildly differing, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
I like the use of the reference bands behind to show the different time periods over the COVID period, the lockdowns and then easing of restrictions. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the annotations particularly. I think they clutter it up a little bit. Maybe that's just where they're placed at the moment. I think also you could maybe make the text a little more concise.
Yeah.
Somehow. Quite a lot of text for an annotation there. It takes up quite a lot of space. But that would be my main observations, I think.
Yeah, and while you were describing that, I had a bit of a closer look. So I'm not convinced the numbers in the top are correct. So the callout says air travel had reached its highest level in 2019. Oh, so this is for the whole year. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But 1 billion travelers? I mean, it sounds like a lot.
It does. Yeah.
I don't know. But then I hope this works. So if I just roughly hover, okay, there's no tooltips at the bottom, so I can't see if I highlight all the points for 2019, does it add up? But it might. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's it just seems like a lot, but I haven't looked at the data, so I'm not sure. What I have noticed is the call-outs, the annotations at the bottom, there's something odd. So it says by April 2020, the total amount of air travelers had fallen to 80 million, a 0% decrease by 0 from January's 80. So these seem to be the same numbers. There's something wrong in the calculations, because it's the same for the next one, where it's again a 0% increase by 0, but the line is different.
Not working in this calc, I don't think.
Yeah, something about the table calc's not quite working.
I've got the data set here. I'm just gonna
do a quick sum.
Quickly check the numbers. Yeah, that's the right number.
Okay. I mean, I'm guessing there are a lot of frequent travelers, especially before the pandemic, where they just travel back and forth, and every time somebody travels, I assume they're going to be counted. So, yeah. So it could well be. I just thought it was a massive number. I mean, that's a seventh of the world's population traveling by air through the US in 2019. But I'm happy to be corrected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's jump to Busy Girl. So this is Rebecca, and I've only really glanced at the picture, and I'm curious to find out more, because there's a lot going on here with lines across. So air travel volume compared with new COVID cases. I
must admit, I'm not sure how to read this.
Yeah, because at first I thought these are the routes from one airport to the next, but it says so February 2020 new cases 19, but how do I see 19 in this map? Because I just see a lot of lines, and again, is it just me or are there no tooltips?
Yeah, I don't get any tooltips either. I'm not sure how to read this really, because we're comparing air traffic volume to COVID cases.
Let me see. I'm just going to download the workbook and hope for the best, and I'm going to open it and see if we can look behind it. And a tip for everyone working with this data set is obviously very large. You can hide all the fields you didn't use so that the file gets a bit smaller when you upload it. Okay, so Tableau is going to take a moment to open, because I want to understand what is behind this line. Like, is it a line chart?
Looks like it's routes or something between different airports, but
that's what I thought. So let's have a look at the February one. February. Okay. What is this? So it's longitude. Okay. So there are actually routes. So I'm just hovering over Alaska. Okay, so this is at the state level. 271 passengers flew from Alaska to, but it doesn't say where to. I'm guessing these other locations in February 2020.
I think the discussion that we're having shows that it's not particularly clear. So
yeah, that's a good. Thank you for cutting me short, because it's that's totally what we should be doing, because we want to look at the other visits as well. But also, not having tooltips is not helpful. Like, if the tooltip said, told me the origin and the destination, at least I can try and make sense of it. But I like the idea of having, a map that shows something or a chart that shows something, because there's such a strong contrast between February, April, and October in terms of the cases, but the execution needs a little bit of work.
I think how we should read this is the far left is the first one. So there's lots of big red blobs there, and the colour scheme, the legend at the bottom says that's to do with passengers, so we can see there's more passengers there. There's hardly any in April 2020, and in October 2020 there's a few more because there's a bit more red.
Yeah.
That's how I'm reading it. But Rebecca, I'm sure there's a really great idea behind this, but I think you need to make it clearer for everyone as to what's happening. And as you can hear, Eva and me are kind of throwing ideas around as to how to interpret it. And really, with data visualization, we want it to jump out and be obvious. So maybe something to bear in mind.
Okay. Alrighty. I just brought up our faces by accident, but we all looked fine. Daniel is next, and Daniel, I think we reviewed his viz last week as well. Again, I'm trying to put together these collections to have a variety of chart types and approaches. So he's looking at passengers traveled. So I would say grammatically, I would say passengers traveling in and out of the US by air, or passengers who traveled. Because at the moment it's not quite a sentence, but it's also not quite a non-sentence, like a heading.
Oh, the main title, yeah.
And again, what you mentioned earlier, we have two very similar charts, but they have very different axes. So one goes from minus 40,000 to 20,000, the other goes from 0 to 80,000. And we have red and green, and it's just a bit,
I'm not sure what the colouring means on the bottom one. It looks like it's actually where 0 is the threshold to determine whether it's green or red.
Yeah.
It could do with a 0 line in there, probably, to make that clearer.
Yeah.
Try not to use green and red as well, because there's quite well known that colourblind people, red-green colourblindness is the most common kind of colourblindness, and a lot of people who suffer from that can't tell the difference between the two.
Including Mabel. Including Mabel,
yeah. She's asleep now. So. But yeah, Colour Oracle online. We talked about this, I think, last week. Colour Oracle, a great resource. It's free. It's colouraoracle.com, I think, with the American spelling of colour, and it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, I think. So worth checking out and running your visits through that every week. Other observations for Daniel's: do something with your tooltips, please. Tooltips are so they're such a great resource or great functionality within Tableau that I always get a little bit sad when there's no formatting or any changing of the names of the fields. If there's passengers in capital letters there, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I have another piece of feedback, and this is my personal opinion, but if you are putting data scientist and aerospace engineer on this, and it's about air travel, I probably expect a bit more in terms of analysis, call-outs, insights. I personally hold data scientists to a higher level of analytical insights than I would data analysts, just because there's advanced techniques involved that you can probably apply some of it to this data. So just be mindful that, by all means, add your title to it, but also make sure that the work you produce reflects that. With that, we'll move on. It keeps coming back to our faces. Here we go. Okay, so Aditya, so this is just a GIF, which is going to be, sorry, but impossible to review because we can't blow up the size on the screen, so it's really small. I can't read it. So we'll have to move on to EK Data, who has also not provided, but we can click on the picture, so we can use that. And EK Data is on the chat. So, and I think Andy said, EK, that you are based in Romania. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please feel free to comment on the chat. But glad to have you done it. Over to you, Luke.
Really like this. I like the simplicity of it. It tells a story. You can see there's been a massive drop in people using planes, which I guess everyone knows anyway. But it's when you see the numbers actually in black and white, as it is here, it's a pretty stark illustration of how bad the air industry has been affected by COVID. So I like it. I'm all in favour of keeping it simple. So
Yeah. And I think so. This is something that I also don't do enough of, but I always preach, and that's find something to compare it to. It's perfectly fine to just report the actual numbers to say, okay, in 2020 there were so many passengers, but it's more meaningful when you do it like EK did, where it's compared to the previous year. And in January, February, it was still up, but then suddenly we have this massive drop. I mean, it's so much more impactful because it's comparing one year versus the other. And I encourage everyone to try and put that in. And Andy is a really good example of someone who always tries to do these comparisons, to always have a reference point, so that you're not left to say, oh, so what? Like, why do the numbers matter? But here you see why they matter, because it's a massive drop.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Nice one, EK.
Yeah. Next we have Irene. And is Irene part of the data school?
She is.
Okay, because I wasn't quite sure, but Andy had mentioned her, and I was wondering if that's the same Irene. So I'll let you go first.
Just opening Tableau Public, 1 second.
Yeah. So Irene created this, I keep forgetting what it's called, the effect, Lithuania, EK, okay, Lithuania. This like kind of beveled look, which is the new neuromorphism or something. There's a name for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it looks nice.
Neuromorphic.
Okay, so we've got a nice simple line chart at the top. I like the fact that she's kind of restricted the marks on the axis on the left-hand side to 0 and 1 billion. Nice context with the label as well at the end of the line. And again, she's comparing one year to the other, so that's a good start. No tooltips. Maybe she could have done something with the tooltips on the line chart, but to be honest, there's quite a lot of information there anyway about what's happening, so maybe she didn't need them for that. And then we have a marginal histogram. One observation about this, maybe she could do more with the title, the calendar 2000 to 2020, maybe add a bit more context or set the scene a bit better with the title. I always like titles that look kind of snappy and draw the user in. You want to encourage people to dive in and explore what you've created. So maybe she could have done something a bit more with that. It's also, the bottom half at least is quite exploratory as well. So you kind of have to get your own kind of insights out of it. So maybe she could have done a little bit more about pointing out some interesting trends or values in there. But I like the formatting and the layout of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with the line chart, what I would do there is not have it in billions, because you just have 0 billion and 1 billion on the axis without any grid lines. So maybe you could go in steps of 200 million or so, just so that there are a few more reference points. And while I'm a huge fan of really clean charts, sometimes grid lines actually help. And I think here the line kind of hangs in space a bit, but it feels a bit lost. So what you could do is use grid lines that are dotted lines, really thin, light gray. So they're just visible enough to be a visual guide, but they're not getting in the way. Because at the moment, for me, it feels a bit like it's hanging in space. I can't really think of another way to describe it. And then, for the calendar, one thing to test, and it might not work, but what I like to use with heat maps is either white borders or dark borders. Sometimes I find that it structures it a bit more, and you can still see the trends. So maybe try that. You could try a dark gray or white or really light gray and see if that looks different, if you like it. But I agree with Luke. It's really neat and clean. Could maybe be a bit narrower because you've got a lot of white space on the side. So maybe air travelers in the US and then line break 2000 to 2020. So it becomes a bit narrower. Okay.
Yeah. Well done, Irene.
Next is Ali.
Ali's also in the data school.
Oh, so I've probably chosen quite a few data schools, because I do sometimes recognize the names, but of course I don't know, is it just someone who's participating or is it someone from the data school? But I do know that there is time for them on Mondays, I believe, to do their Makeover Monday.
Yeah, Ali's also in DS23. So
and they just started a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah. So they're right at the beginning of their journey with the data school. So.
Excellent. So everyone make sure to follow them and get them to follow you as well. Bit of networking involved. So what do you think of Ali's viz using a barbell? Is it a barbell chart? It's just kind of...
I call this a DNA chart, but it could easily be a barbell chart as well.
Okay.
I don't know.
It reminds me a bit of, mobile phone menu buttons that you switch on and off, or the kind of cookie buttons. Do you accept cookies? No. Okay, so what do we have?
Yeah, I really like this. Again, he's comparing year on year, so similar to the other chart that we saw. It looks like he's doing kind of a total level of passengers by month. And yeah, I like the aesthetics of it. I like the white space, the title he's used. I think the title could be a little bit more informative, maybe. But yeah, I like the layout of it, and it's nice and clean, and yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I agree. I really like it. One suggestion I would make is, because there is quite a bit of space, to maybe make the axis labels larger. And I'm not going blind, but I just find it more comfortable these days to actually read something that's not sized 9 or 10 point, but maybe 12. It can look a bit clunky, so I personally try to then have a light font that's not so heavy, but larger. It fills up the space more. And because I found that with Tableau, quite often you have a really big chart, but the font is really small. So yeah, maybe test that out. And I would also suggest to maybe have something to the effect of, January, February, we still had more passenger travel in 2020 compared to 2019, but then it swapped, because that helps people understand the chart a bit better, because they see, first there's not a lot of difference, plus the dark blue is on top, and then suddenly it changes. We all know what happened, but I think spelling it out helps just to explain how to read the viz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Well done.
Good. Nice style. So well done, Ali.
Yeah, definitely. And nice color choices. Then we have Severio. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. Here we go. And here we have a bar chart where the bars only show the difference between the 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so it's always compared to the prior year. So we see how there's been, a bit of a decrease. Well, so first there was a decrease, I guess 2001 after 9/11, if I had to guess. And then...
so he's using a table calc, isn't he, to show the change from the previous year. So, it tells a story, right? It's kind of dropped off a cliff in 2020, and it's pretty compelling to see, the size of the bar in terms of the change from, the previous 10, 15 years have been relatively consistent in terms of, slight movements, but then it's absolutely been destroyed since COVID. So yeah.
Now, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one would be, what about using blue for something, I guess you could call it negative, or, a decrease?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably red would be what you would associate with, a very bad drop movement or something. He has referenced the blue in the title, though, and in the text next to it. So, we can associate the negative movement with that color based on the word drop he's used.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, to be honest. I might have chosen red myself, but I don't know. I mean, you almost don't need to color it at all, right? Because you're double encoding it here in a sense, because you've got the length of the bar, which tells you the size of the movement. So he could have kept it all the same shade. But it doesn't hurt what he's done. I think I quite like the color scheme.
Yeah. So I do like the color, and I think it depends a bit on the context. So if I were making a viz about CO2 emissions, I'd be like, oh, great, there's a drop in air travel, there will be fewer emissions. But personally, if we're looking at air travel as an industry thing or in revenue generator, then I would probably, like you, make it red or orange, or just something that feels a bit more negative in this context of, Western. Like, I know that in some, in China, red is a positive color. So, something to keep in mind. Now, also, the one challenge I have here, and this is not a criticism of what Saverio did, but in general of the year-over-year comparison, is, so if we look at, okay, let's start with 2001. We have minus 7% compared to 2000. The next year is minus 2%, which looks like less of a decrease, but it's actually 2% less than the previous 7% less. So it's even fewer travelers. And I think that's where this kind of visualization can be a bit challenging if you don't have the actual numbers included as well, because you see what the percentage drop or increase is, but it's always on top of the previous year, right? Is that how you would explain?
Yeah, he's got the numbers in the tooltip.
Yeah.
I just downloaded the workbook to see what font he used, and because the text to the right of the main title to me is all in Times New Roman, which on a Mac normally indicates that it's in a font that the Mac can't recognize, and it's sure enough it's in YU Gothic medium. I just think it's worth bearing in mind that people are going to be looking at your dashboards across different operating systems, and trying to get a font that's recognized across the board is a good idea. I really don't like Times New Roman, and I appreciate that he hasn't chosen Times New Roman, but my computer's rendering.
Yeah, same.
That's a default font when a Mac can't render something. So
yeah,
just bear that in mind as well, because it can change the whole appearance of a viz when suddenly you get Times New Roman.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on, if you have a text that's dynamic, depending on what data people select, then I would choose a font that's, say, for Tableau Public to render properly. Otherwise, you could always make it a picture and just stick it on. Then I literally take a picture of the text in that font that you chose and stick that picture on the dashboard. It's not ideal, but, you've got to do what you've got to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. And thank you, EK, for jumping on the chat, and Taylor. Yep, so appreciate that we are doing this a day earlier than usual. We just have to work around kind of live things. And as a little heads up, there won't be this review in May. I need a bit of a breather. I'm running out of capacity, so I'm just going to take a little break. So make sure to tune in today and then next week, and then we'll take a break for a month. Okay, next we have Melis Kurum. I do not recognize the name, but I can see a very fun looking viz. Now was this data set, okay, I have to ask, was this data set US only or for the whole world?
It was for the whole world.
Oh, okay. So maybe it was just because I saw Andy's viz and he focused on the US, so I thought maybe it was just US, but okay. This is cool.
I really like it. I questioned in my mind whether a line chart might have been a better way to show, particularly when you're pointing out particular events, like, she has got the 2008 financial crisis, COVID-19, September 11th, etc. To me, it seems kind of more logical seeing that on a timeline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or having maybe even you could overlay a box with just a border that shows the impact immediately in maybe the few months afterwards or the couple of years, because September attacks, it's more obvious because you see the red, but the financial crisis, it's hard to tell with the light colors, right?
Yeah. But, it does work. I just, in my mind, having to sort of go up and down to see these.
You kind of go left to right and jump across. Yeah.
It's kind of, I understand the chart, but almost the annotations throw me a little bit, because I'd expect to see that in a timeline, if that makes sense. But maybe it's just me, I don't know, but it's having to kind of process that and the heat map as well. This throws me off the off the track a little bit. But
No, I totally agree. And we just a clarification, it was a data set only with flights originating in the US or flying to the US. So it's not global air travel.
Right.
And I like your suggestion of a line chart because I actually think, so I like the concept, like the whole design thing, but the heat map doesn't actually fit with the rest of the page. And I think you can make a line chart fit much more easily because you could have, a nice kind of really thick line that is maybe the same red as the title, and then attach all of these annotations to the line. I think the overall design might actually be improved by changing it to a line as well.
Yeah, and I think it would require less explanation. So, point 1 on the right-hand side, with a few exceptions, there's been a steady increase in the number of air passengers over the last 20 years. Now, that increase, I don't think, is immediately obvious looking at the heat map. I mean, when you figure out what's on the axes, and as you go down towards the bottom, you can see the colours darkening. But yeah, also they've used a diverging colour scheme as well. So we've got blue and red, and I'm not quite sure what the threshold is in terms of what determines whether it's blue or red. There's no like gradient or colour legend. So maybe it's below 50
It might be
million,
driven by the change from the prior year or months or something. But yeah, it's not clear.
I don't know. I think it doesn't say that in the tooltip, so I reckon it's just based on a numerical value, but I'm not sure what that numerical value is.
Yeah.
So it seems to be maybe 50 million, or below 50 million, and it's red.
Okay. Which is a bit arbitrary to me, at least.
Yeah, I think maybe the decrease might stand out more if you just use a sequential color scheme rather than a divergent. I don't know.
Yeah, agreed. Okay.
But obviously put some work into it, so well done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really like, the top design might change a bit if you're focusing on travel to and from the US, without really talking about some of the destinations. I do want to, so for Taylor and others, very quickly go to YouTube and Andy Scribble's channel. So the one you're on right now watching this, I'm not going to click on it so we don't get a feedback. But if you hit subscribe, and there's also a notifications bell, and that way you will get notified about new videos and stuff. So we have these scheduled. They are also on Makeover Monday/data. So in that table, Andy usually posts them in there. So you see the links for the different things. So the middle one is Viz Review. There's a link in there. So just check those. But the easiest is probably just to subscribe to Andy's channel so you get a notification about any new scheduled live events. Okay, let's move over to Henna. She's not in the data school, is she?
Well, not yet.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So she is one of the finalists for DS24. So.
All right, Henna. Let's warm up with some feedback. Because Andy's pretty, I guess, clear on giving feedback. So I'm sure this is a good little practice run. So yearly air passengers passing through TSA checkpoints. I quite like the specific title. The only thing you might have to do is explain what a TSA checkpoint is, because if people haven't traveled to the US, they might not know.
Yeah, I really like this. This is cool. I like I don't know, you're on Tableau Public, Eva, or are you just looking at the image?
I am, yes, yeah.
So when you change the year parameter for comparing 2020, you can see that the comparative year circle moves down the line charts. Yeah, it's great. I think it's a really nice layout and really, really neat. So I agree with you on TSA checkpoints. Maybe not everyone knows what they are, but it's a great job. So I might maybe consider doing the comparative year in a different color. But again, that's probably subjective. Just so you know which dot's which, but I like it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, okay, internal flights. I would probably visually group the internal flights a bit more and the external, because I thought it was 4 different things, but 2 of them are internal flights. But then, okay, I don't understand it. So internal flights, why does it say entered the US and departed the US if it's internal flights? Wouldn't it be maybe, I guess it's left from one state or left from one US city to another? Is that how it works?
Yeah. Maybe.
So I think the internal flights might need a different wording in there.
Landed and took off or something. And, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Or even just from within the US to within the US or something like that. Because otherwise I think it's a bit hard to understand the difference. And then I would also fix the axes, because currently they all look like they're about the same amount, but external is about 1/10, if I see the numbers correctly, of the internal. So there's a lot more domestic travel than international travel. So the line should be lower.
Agreed. Maybe a label on the end, something like that might work.
Yep.
Sorry, maybe it's just chewing something up. Stop it.
Okay, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Oh, I think we can make that. So next up...
Good job, Henna, anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll move on to Amanda Lopez. And I do have to say, I love annotated line charts. I think that, like, we've had them before, and, you know, you've commented on one of the previous ones to turn them into a line chart. I think the annotations just really guide people through what happened over time.
Yeah, agreed. My main criticism of this is on the formatting, actually. I find that she could have maybe given a little bit more space between the title and the chart. So we've got the US air travel decreased by 20 million. That's, to me, it looks a little bit busy around that sort of area, and it's not that far away from the title and the explanatory text underneath. So I'd be tempted just to either make the annotation a little bit smaller or give it a bit more space, I think.
Yeah, I'm just opening it because I thought maybe we can do a very quick live demo. I always cross my fingers when I do that, because you never know if it's going to work or not. And also, now, if my English isn't failing me, it should be descend with a D at the end, not a T, because that looks like decent.
No, that's right, because decent wouldn't have an S in it.
Yeah. So if we make that, let's say...
Drastic descent is fine.
Okay, so I'm just making the annotations a bit smaller, because just to balance it out with kind of the rest of the text, and a bit higher up. Now, I actually would, on the axis, okay, I'm going to make sure you can see it all, the interval, maybe 25 million, so that it doesn't get so busy on the axis. And, back to it, the fixed end, maybe 101 million. No, we need a bit more. We need 115. Just so that the 100 million label can be actually next to that little dash. You can also remove the dash, of course. Now, I think I made that, did I say 16 or 15? I don't remember. I think it was 15.
I'd be tempted even to remove the y-axis and have annotations on the start and the beginning of the line.
Yeah, okay.
Because the values here don't go up to anywhere near 100 million.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
So it's kind of
literally just
the axis is determined by the big negative drop at the end for scale. So
yeah. So
I'd be tempted to get rid of that and, you know, have another label and kind of rejig the formatting a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just kind of winging it here. So I'm just adding the mark label, and I hope people know this trick too. You can select which mark label you actually want to show. Let's put this a bit lower. And then also, so on the x-axis, we probably, So we don't want to have any of these minor tick marks. They make it really look really busy, and maybe this could be every 2 years. But if we do the origin in an odd year, because we had 2001 is a significant year, 2019 is the last one before, last year, but then also with the financial crisis, there's that dip in 2008, which you can see. And then maybe get rid of some of these grid lines. We both don't really love grid lines, do we?
I can't see any grid lines on my monitor.
Okay, I've just gotten rid of that, and then so I believe this is because it's descending. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful. I'm sometimes so one thing I would add is the formatting of the annotations. I think the line what happened here? What is this line? Because okay, so it looks like there's some floating stuff going on, maybe. I don't know how to get rid of this annotation line because it doesn't. Aha. Let's get rid of that. And what I'm not sure what that was attached to. September 11. Okay, so this is what the annotation should be attached to. So, so what I would recommend, if we annotate this point, and then get rid of that one, because then we can, I have a trackpad, which is sometimes a bit temperamental. Okay, so I think the reason why Amanda did that is so that the line is straight, and I'm going to go back to it because it looks better. But this annotation, so she's basically has a blank annotation and then this dotted line, and I'm just going to make that a bit lighter. I think that's actually a really clever approach. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful, and we'll jump over back to the Twitter for the last couple of visualizations. Okay. Oh, you've already seen Alex's viz. I'll let you comment on that one.
Yeah, I really love this. I mean, just reminds me of a picture my daughter would draw or something, and it's I think it's really cute. It's cool. I think I'm not sure it's that easy to interpret without you got to hover on the see the tooltip. So there's no kind of visual indications, with labels or anything like that as to what you're actually looking at. But that's cool because it looks like a cartoon or a drawing or something. So,
yeah. It's really interesting that he's created, the sky out of a heat map, the trees out of a lollipop chart, and then he's got a line chart for the chemtrails, and the clouds is actually US and the other countries. I think I wouldn't have thought of it. I think that's really clever.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I don't know what I haven't downloaded it, so I don't know what he's used to to colour the sky with. There's no tooltips on that. But
so I wonder, Luke, so at the moment you've got the Mapbox label stuck in there because there's a background map without a map. But right. Could you just have a scatter plot to plot these so that you don't have these labels there? Would that work?
I'd have to try it potentially.
Yeah, because I mean, the labels are there for, I guess, copyright reasons, so that's all fine. But they do get a bit in the way of the whole picture being a picture. Yeah.
I guess you could try floating something over. The cloud changes colour when you click on, or the sky changes colour rather when you click on a cloud.
Oh, it does, yeah. Click on cloud to filter by flight origin. Okay.
I just clicked on Norway, which is kind of in the middle and to the top, and then
I clicked on Greenland and it kind of messed it up a bit. Yeah, it might be better to
Oh,
keep
yeah.
on. Canada
I
is a good
agree,
one.
man.
Canada is a good one.
But look, I like stuff like this. I think it's great to experiment, and I think, you know, one of the main things in data visualization is creativity, and doing things like this is a bit of fun. Yeah, sure, it's not technically data viz best practice, but it's not really intended to be either. So I really like it.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you just need to do something that's kind of fun and a bit playful as well. So let's move on to Idris, or Idris. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. Oh, I need to shrink this up a little bit. Here we go. 100% nicely fills up my screen. So here we have a heat map with really small font, or is that just my eyes? It feels really small.
Yeah, dashboard itself is, I think, no, it's quite big. Maybe could be made a little bit more concise. I'm having to scroll around. I've got quite a big monitor here, and I'm having to scroll around a fair bit. But yeah, I like the design. I think the aesthetics are really nice. I'm not sure whether the heat map needs the movements annotated on text. I mean, you can tell when he's used a stepped color scheme here. So grey through to orange for the higher values. I don't know what the middle point of that is. I'm guessing it's around 45 million, something like that. But
and there isn't really a rule that says, okay, that number is good, that number is bad. So I think if you have a percentage change and there's negative and positive, then 0 is the obvious middle point. But otherwise, it doesn't seem something.
Yeah, it's also, I think the use of color is slightly misleading as well, because you've got the bar chart at the top with, you know, the 68% drop, which we saw on another chart today as well.
Yeah.
But then you've got the same colors on the heat map, which actually relate. They don't relate to the drop. I don't think they relate to the passengers. So that's slightly inconsistent. I think I look at that bar chart and then the big orange drop. Then I look down at the highlight table or heat map, and I look at the orange ones and I assume that they're associated with really negative drops as well in numbers. But actually, if you look at 4 down from the top on the right-hand side, you've got an orange cell, which is 160% increase, actually.
Yeah.
So it's slightly misleading, I think, or inconsistent in terms of the use of color.
Yeah, I also find it's a lot of work for me as the viewer. Like, firstly, I need to, okay, so I'm just going to zoom in to see, like, this is comfortable to read, and it's now at 150%. So, you know, it shouldn't be impossible for me to see. And there's plenty of room in these boxes to make the font larger. So that would be my first point. Also, there's a lot of up and down arrows, but why should I care? Like, there's a lot of information there, but it's all there at once, which it doesn't have to be. You know, maybe just a few of these months and year intersections could be labeled so that you kind of like, oh, okay, that's an interesting one. Also in the text, there is, so the months April, March, that should be capitalized, and there's a space missing after a comma. So some of those things, and it feels like a lot, but I don't get anything out of it obvious or very quickly. You know, like I see a lot of information, but I don't know what to take away from it, because the easiest to understand is the bar chart in the top right corner.
Yeah.
But the most space is taken up by the big heat map, which design-wise is fine, but it's just like, what am I supposed to do with it?
Yeah, it seems a bit out of proportion. I like the bar chart. I like the aesthetics of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it needs the percentage change to be labelled, because you have that value in the tooltip anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also the color is inconsistent to the bar chart. So
yeah.
But I like the aesthetics, so it's, you know, something to work on.
Okay, we might only do one more because I have another 2 meetings and I do need a bio break before then. So, actually, maybe we'll do them quickly. We'll do Harriet and then Muhammad, because there's only 2 left. So Harriet, I believe, is in the data school.
She is. Okay. Yep. Good attendance this week from DS23. Well done.
Absolutely. The influence of COVID-19 on air travel in the US and UK. Okay, so you see 2020, how like 2020 is red, and there's a really stark effect on the numbers. The line chart, I would suggest, needs an axis or at least a value label, because April saw 87%. Oh, this is quite small. Decrease, which is something I see. But then, what's the top? I would say it should. Most of your vis should be obvious from a static image. It's fine for people to explore, but they should be able to understand it or grasp it from a static image. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the top chart, you have the 2 reference lines, so they give you some context of values, which is okay. Harriet, tooltips. Don't forget them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do more with the tooltips, definitely. I'm looking down at the line chart, and you've got month of date, and then the abbreviation of the month, so the first letter of the month. So that could be, obviously, people probably will know what it means, but could be clearer.
Now, the bar chart confuses me because, as we've just learned, this is data about flights from and to the US. So I think the bar chart, I would say it's actually incorrect because this is not, it says air travel in the US and the UK, but these are just flights between the US and the UK for that particular focus. So if you're saying, okay, what's the involvement of the UK? Well, if the US has all these internal flights and flights out of the US and flights into the US, of course the UK will have much fewer because it's just the ones connecting to the US and the UK.
Yeah.
So that's probably, I wouldn't focus it that way. Maybe you could just say, flights, maybe out of all the flights going from the US to other countries, flights to the UK were only this amount and all other countries were this amount, or something like that. Or the rest of Europe was this amount. Something that's more valid to compare.
Yeah, and the line chart definitely needs some sort of context to it as well.
Yeah.
Because, fair enough not having a y-axis, but maybe put the value on the end of the lines or something.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do very quick Muhammad's viz. I really like it from the picture that I've seen, because there's this like super obvious drop and there's a big label of the drop. And I think that's a great way to point out the obvious. Yeah. I don't know if I have anything else to say about that.
It's not much more you can say about that, really, is it?
Yeah.
Maybe you can include the month in the tooltip, maybe. I'm hovering over the values, and you have to kind of look down to the axis to check what month you're on.
Yeah.
But that's a very minor point. But I like it. I think this week there's been some really nice sort of basic vizzes which get the idea across that they're trying to show. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll bring us quickly back for a quick goodbye. And look, are we going to do dog favorites again this week? Do you have swag left?
Yeah, I've got plenty. That's my swag box.
Excellent.
So I haven't posted out the most recent ones. I'll do that probably on Thursday or Friday. But yeah, we'll do them over the weekend maybe.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. I've got to run to my next meeting. Thanks for joining me again, and hopefully everyone got some good feedback here, some helpful stuff, and looking forward to the updates.
Cool.